I will concentrate first on this Vivaha Samskara. Of course, you asked me to talk about the Saptapadi, which is a part of Vivaha Samskara. But if I talk about it straight, I will not have any background or I will not be able to appreciate the full significance of it. So I'm just discussing about several other facets of it. And of course, the core of the whole Vivaha Samskara is Saptapadi, that I'll come to it.
Yes.
So this Vivaha Samskara, as I was telling, Vaha Prapane, that is to take on as different exclusive special responsibilities. Vishesha Ritya. So in a special way, in an extraordinary way, we take upon us certain responsibilities, and that occasion we call it as Vivaha. And this meaning is not conveyed by any other word other than Vivaha. Vivaha is the right word for that. So they call it as Vivaha Samskara. So Samskara, yes, as I was explaining earlier, it will help the people who are involved in that Vivaha Samskara or that nuptial knot, as I call it, for the spiritual development. That's the ultimate goal. That's the ultimate goal. Now this Vivaha Samskara has got different dimensions, and has to be looked at from different angles. So only when you understand all these things, then how it is achieved, okay, the acme of it, the highest level of it is in the Saptapadi. So what is the purpose, how it is to be achieved? So many things. Now, human beings are also basically animals. Animals have got one instinct. That is, Nidra, Hara, Bhaya, Maithuna. The four basic instincts. Nidra is about sleep, Ahara is about food, Bhaya is about fear, or they say it as fight or flight. That's what they say. If possible, you fight, otherwise, run away. So those instincts come under Bhaya. And last one, Maithuna, is reproduction, procreation. So these instincts are common to all animals, including human beings. Now the last one is in the focus now. That is the basic instinct of reproduction. Now in an animal, it just happens so mechanically. It happens so mechanically, purely at the physical level. I'm stressing it, purely at the physical level. And if one male copulates with another female, yes, procreation is over. And we don't find any such thing called as, any such institution called as family and a relationship. Such things are not there. It's just a physical relationship, and that's the end of it. But even in the animal world, we do have some animals, some birds. Though it is not well defined as in human life, yes, they live like a family. They live like a family. That is, one male to one female to one male, and the children, they are all brought up together and they live together, as though it is like a family. But the concept of family is not defined there. By nature, they live together. But whereas when you come to the level of human beings, the whole issue is different. Because here, the relationship between a male and a female in the human life, it is not just physical. That's a very important thing. It's not just physical. We have got other two dimensions, that is the mental and the spiritual. And in this human life, with this tool of Sharira, Indriya, Manas, Manas is very, very important. So we have got a physical relationship, we have got a mental relationship, we have got a spiritual relationship. All the three dimensions we have to consider here. And in the human life, it's the other way around. Spiritual life is the highest, psychological is the second, physical is the last. But physical is not missing. We are having it also, but that is not the essence of it. That's not very, very important. In the relationship between a male and a female, in case of a human being. Now, the necessity for physical relationship. One, it is an urge. It is an innate urge in the tool. Because that tool has to be kept alive. One tool has to give rise to another tool has to give rise to another tool. Okay. Only then the chain of creation of the tool and using the tool by the soul, it can happen. So it has to be produced and reproduced. So the urge is there in that very tool. There is an urge in the tool and the root of it is there in the soul. The soul, when it is in contact with the jada, sharira, indriya, manas, it will have the tendency to replicate the same sharira, indriya, manas, replication. So that is what they call it as, what is jati? And they define the jati, they speak of this, samana prasavatmika jatihi. Jati is that, it's not caste as you understand now. Jati is that which reproduces of its own kind. Samana prasavatmika jatihi. That's how they define it. So it produces a species of the same kind, of the same form, of the same capacity. A tool. A tool begets a tool. So it is an inherent tendency of the tool as well as the operator and the apparatus. The operator will have the tendency and his apparatus is equipped for reproduction. Only when it reproduces a species of its own kind, yes, the souls will have an opportunity to get into it and use it as a tool. Now this chain, if it has to be kept running, these tendencies are essential and these tendencies are very clearly identified. And I was telling earlier, Vivaha, Vanaprastha and Sannyasa, these three are conditional. These three samskaras are not compulsory because there are so many prerequisites to be satisfied. Only when these prerequisites are satisfied, yes, these samskaras are given. Now, for example, this Vivaha samskara to take place between two people, that is a male and a female. Now this has to take place and finally result in the production of the progeny. Both must be potent. If they are not potent, then the meaning of the whole marriage, the meaning of reproduction fails. So potency or the capacity to reproduce is a prerequisite here. That's not the only prerequisite, that is one of the prerequisites. And in human, but this is the only prerequisite in case of animal world, other than human beings. They got that potency to reproduce, yes, there is end of it. No other prerequisite. And of course, they have got so many other things also there. That is, they reproduce in their own species. Cross species is not there. Reproduction between cross species is not there. Number one. And they won't reproduce unless they reach a certain age, certain level. Youth, you may call it as. And it varies from animal to animal. So when they reach that stage of youth, only then they go behind the other gender and produce. Another thing, they follow these seasonal fluctuations. It's not that they come together always. They have got their own system and it is guided by the different seasons and natural changes. Depending upon that, they get into heat only during that season, during only that period, and then they come together and reproduce. So these are all other naturally controlled environment for them. And the physical urge is the end of it. There is no question of the mental dimension or the spiritual dimension there. When you come back to the human beings, it's totally different. It's not just physical, it is physical plus mental plus spiritual. Therefore, the relationship between a male and a female has to be well defined here, and it is totally different from what happens in an animal world. This we have to consider, this we have to understand, and only then we will understand the importance of the Vivaha Samskara and whatever they teach, the male and the female, for tying the knot together. That's a very, very important thing. Now, many argue, okay, for reproduction it is just mating of a male and a female. Why create so many other things and create a fuss for it? The reason is, man is different from the human beings are different from the animal things. There is only one dimension that is physical in animal world, whereas in a human world, it is physical plus mental plus spiritual. Because all the three dimensions are there, the whole issue is totally different in human life. So this we have to understand very clearly. So we cannot compare the living human beings with animal world. What happens in the animal world is totally different, and what happens here in the human world is totally different. Then, one more angle for it. I speaking of relationships. Relationships do not exist in the animal world. If we use the words what we use in the human relationships, okay, in an animal, we have got a father and mother and a child. Now the child becomes an adult, becomes young and ready to reproduce. It may mate with its own mother. There is no restriction at all. That is, the relationships as we speak of in human society does not exist in the animal world, and there is no restriction whatsoever. Any male can reproduce with the help of any other female. Any female can have its relationship with any other male. There is no consideration of any other sort. Male and female is the end of it. That's in case of an animal world. But in human world it's not so. Because there are so many relationships, father, mother, son, daughter, brother, there are so many things. And the genealogical impacts are very much in human life. So because of these genealogical impacts, the relationship between one male and female is controlled, is restricted, and a lot of rules and regulations are laid down. Now whatever I'm telling, it is not just religious, because in all religions they speak about this. It's not just religious, it is also scientific. Of course, earlier or at one point of time, or some parts of the religious things are also scientific, but unfortunately that scientific temper is lost and religions have been reduced to some beliefs and dogmas. That's a big problem. Okay. Science says the relationship between close blood relationships, there will be so many problems, and the probability of the hereditary problems coming out is more. That's what they speak of. Therefore, they prohibit certain relationships. There is maybe the mother and the son, father and the daughter, the brother and the sister, so many things. So they have got a lot of restrictions, and even when we go back to the different Ayurvedic tests, that is the medicinal and scientific books, they say they should be at least the husband and wife who are living together, who join together, at least there should be 7 generations gap should be there. That's what they say, 7 generations. So if I take, say, one bride and one groom, so the father and mother of the bride, their father and mother, if I go back to 7 generations, and the same thing if I do with the groom, that is 7 generations, if I go back, there should not be any link. That should be the distance. That should be the distance between 2 generations. Only then we will have good progeny, only then we have got very healthy children, and all the possible hereditary problems, hereditary deficiencies can be overcome, is what they speak of. So they go for 7 generations. But I don't think we remember our 7 generations. We may know ourselves, we may know our parents, and maybe grandparents, and at most great-grandparents, over. 3 to 4 we can have, but they say keep track of the 7 generations and see that in the 7 generations they are not close. Then the probability or the deficiencies, the congenital deficiencies, congenital diseases, congenital means that which come by birth, that is hereditary deficiencies. So those problems can be avoided. That is what they say. Now these are all special and specific for human race. And we are not comparing the way human beings live with the way the animals live. That is totally a different issue. This is totally a different issue. So that we should be very clear. Here, only when that gap between the bride and the groom, it's a big gap of maybe of 7 generations. Yes, all the congenital deficiencies can be reduced to a very great extent. That's what they say. And of course, the science also speaks about it. That is the hereditary deficiencies, how the hereditary factors move from one generation to another generation through this DNA, RNA, chromosomes, and this gene mapping and so many things they speak of. There also they speak of the same thing. It doesn't differ from the latest investigations, latest research, and what has been spoken of earlier in Ayurveda and set text. Ayurveda, of course, is a Upaveda of the first basic 4 Vedas. So this is one point what I have to consider. Then, another basic difference is, here is not just physical, it is physical plus mental. So when you come to the mind, there are so many capacities, so many moods, so many attitudes, so many aptitudes that get reflected. So unless there is a match between the bride and the groom at this level, the relationship cannot be sustained. This is a very, very important thing. That's what we see. That is, they marry, and within a short period, they come to a conclusion that they cannot live together and they get separated, divorce. So this is happening. So this is happening not just for physical reasons, but also mental reasons. Incompatibility. Now, one point to be observed here is this compatibility or incompatibility, of course, at the physical level and also at the mental level, is or will not happen 100% automatically. Physical thing at one level, mental level, the compatibility has to be developed. That's a very, very important thing. The mental compatibility has to be developed. There will be some gap, there will always be some difference between 2 persons. Now that gap has to be bridged. That's what I'm telling, the compatibility has to be developed. Now this compatibility to be developed can happen well only between that is, if a person, say male, has got relationship with more than one female, or one female having relationship with more than one male, say call it as polygamy and polyandry. So when it is polygamy or polyandry, this question of bridging, this question of working out the compatibility between husband and wife will suffer. Because one person, the whole life is required to build one bridge. So if he has got a relationship with many, it is impossible to build bridges. One person, different bridges to different people, or one female, different bridges to different male. It will never happen. So finally, the whole process of bridging, the whole process of developing the compatibility will collapse. And unless this compatibility is established, is developed, we will not be able to enjoy that relationship. This is the point. The relationship between a male and a female can be enjoyed only when there is compatibility at the physical level, compatibility at the mental level. Of course, our spiritual level is still there. I'm not coming to that now. So only when that compatibility is there, yes, they can enjoy the company of the other person. Now this can happen only when polygamy is not followed, only when polyandry is not followed. But a practical problem is there. Sometimes it so happens that the ratio of male to female will vary. Maybe males are more, female or less. Maybe female are more and male are less. It may happen in some societies or in some conditions, some extreme conditions. When it happens, only in such condition, as an exceptional rule, polygamy or polyandry can be resorted to only for a temporary period unless the situation improves. That's all. So there we are compromising. We are actually compromising upon the compatibility in relationships because of the peculiar situation then. But polygamy or polyandry is not a general rule, but is a very, very, very exceptional rule. Only when we are very clear that there is a gap, a very serious gap between the ratio of male to female or male to female to male. So except the situation, nowhere polygamy or polyandry is supported by a healthy society. This is a very, very important thing. Because of that mental dimension. That mental dimension is so powerful that even if there is some incompatibility at the physical level, if the mental compatibility is there, the relationship will be very fine, wonderful. Any issues, there will not be any problems. But if mental compatibility is not there, even if the physical compatibility is there, the relationship fails. The relationship decays and collapses. So that is the importance of the mental compatibility. Now same thing if I am speaking of mental compatibility and spiritual compatibility. So spiritual compatibility is still more powerful and basic thing. Okay, coming back to physical and mental relationships. Now the physical and mental relationships cannot happen, or that compatibility cannot be developed, cannot be created, cannot be worked out unless they are bound together. Unless they are bound together, one to one male to one female to one male. Now this binding of the two is not just a contract. It's a very important thing. It's not just a contract. Contract is a legal term. Okay, I offer you so many things, you offer me so many things, so I give 8, you give me 8. Yes, once you give 8, I take 8, the transaction is over, clear. Or maybe I give 8, you give 10. Okay, that is, it is a contract, it is an agreement. So depending upon that agreement and the terms of the agreement, they transact, they work together. But this type of relationship is not like that. Because we cannot quantify what we give and what we take. And we are not very particular about how much we give and how much we take. Only then this compatibility can be established. In particular, the mental compatibility. So it is an understanding, okay, we live together, so I give something, you give me something, but we are not keeping track of it, we are not keeping an account of it. Now it is beyond a contract, it is beyond a mathematical contract, mathematical calculation. Now for that, the relationship between the two has to be defined well, and that definition is what is called as the framework of marriage. Within the framework of marriage, it considers all these things. In the framework of vivaha, the things are different. One simple way of understanding is, whereas in a transaction, the parties involved in the transaction, they are concentrating upon their benefits. There is a contract between A and B, let me say. A is worried about how much I am getting, what is my profit, and how much I have to shell down. And B also thinks in the same way, what I get and how much I have to shell down. This is a contract. But this vivaha is not a contract like this. It is both of them come together and say what we get and what we can give to the society. They consider themselves as one unit and not two separate pieces. Between them there is a contract. In contract, A and B are different and give and takes happens between A and B. Whereas in a marriage, A and B become one or work as though they are one, and what they can get from society and the world and what they have to give to the society and what this other thing. So it's not a contract. It is fusion. We can say it's a fusion. The two become one. The two become one. Now, this way of understanding things is peculiar and special to Indian and Vedic origin.
Okay.
In many other societies also such things are there, but they are not as clearly defined as here. They follow it. They follow it. They have got that fidelity point of it. Husband being faithful to the wife, one female being faithful to the other one, or if they cross it, they call it as something unethical, and so many is there. But the whole system is not well defined. That's the point I'm telling. It is well defined in this Indian origin. It is well defined in the Vedic society, the Vedic culture, where they follow the Vedic guidelines. There, these things are very well defined, very clearly defined, and there is no confusion whatsoever. Okay, at this point, we have to think of other things. I said it is not a contract. I said it is fusion. So, with this in the background, living relationship becomes something animal-like.
Okay.
Living relationship. There is no question of becoming one. Okay, I live with you, you live with me. I have got some needs to satisfy my needs. You have got certain needs, I try to satisfy it. As long as we are satisfying, we live together. Fine. Then one day, you go in that way, I go this way. There is no binding at all. There is no fusion at all. They maintain their individual identities. They maintain their individual identities. As long as their selfish needs are satisfied, yes, they can live together. And each one is not bothered about the need or the requirement of the other person, physically or emotionally or mentally, whatever it is. They are very clearly standing on their own, and they never bother about the other person. Whereas if a question of fusion comes, then it is not selfish. Yes, one party thinks about the feelings and requirements of the other, and the other one feels about the first person, and they compromise, they agree, they sacrifice, they cooperate. But all these things are missing in living. Living, okay, as long as I'm comfortable, we live together. If it is not comfortable to me, you get out, I get out. There is not even that contract also is not there. But in some places, okay, they write down a contract and say, as long as these things happen, we are living together. If these terms are transgressed, okay, you quit, I quit. Some people, they make in writing also. But whatever it is far, far less than even a contract. It's not even a contract. But you are speaking of a fusion. When you are speaking of a fusion, contract itself is meaningless, and contracts of this type, living relationships, is still horrible. There is no element of humanity, but it's only an element of selfishness and animal urges, satisfaction animal urges. Number one. Then, as I was telling, the relationship between man and wife, the purpose of peace is to procreate, to reproduce. So unless we reproduce, that is, unless the man and wife join together and create another tool for another soul to come in, the relationship between man and wife, or the meaning of this whole vivaha, fails. The purpose of vivaha is to procreate. Now another important thing is there. It is not just begetting a child and forgetting about it. Even in animal world, it doesn't happen. Say, an egg breaks and a small bird comes out. The mother or the father or the parents will not forsake it and get out. They stay with it. They bring food, feed that small bird. And over a period when the bird is capable of tending itself, and it is capable of flying, it is capable of protecting itself, then only, yes, they live it and they live for themselves. Even in animal world, say a small cub, a lion cub is there. The mother will take care of it, nurse it until it is independent. Once it is independent, it leaves and goes. So it is there even in the whole animal world. Maybe most of the time the responsibility falls on the female, and in some cases the responsibility is on male also. Anyhow, there is some relationship between them for a short period until the child becomes independent. Now, here in human life, a child needs such nursing, it needs such guidance, it needs protection, not only from the male, but also from the female. Female and male both put together have to work for the tending of the small babies, small children. Now this, if it has to happen, there should be clear understanding and fusion between the male and the female. Now that's also the part of the vivaha. These are different dimensions that I got for that vivaha. The physical side is there, the parental side is there, the fusion side is there, and developing the compatibility side is there, so many things. Now the benefit is only when all these things happen, then the satisfaction, the happiness will be there to both equally. If something is missing, both will feel that and both will be in misery. They will not be happy. Though there is that wedlock. So wedlock is not just something mechanical, but upon that wedlock, so many things have to be developed for the happiness and comfort of, for experiencing peace of both the parties involved. It's not one. Now this stands out separately compared to the animal life. So we cannot compare the two. This is different, that is different. It's not just male plus female, it is a fusion of male and female at the physical level and also at the mental level. Now we are seeing at the individual level, at the joint level, and at the level of the children. So the child and the parents have to live together, and that's the concept of a family. Now, whereas in case of animals, this concept of family, though not well defined, is there, and the whole thing happens for a short period. Whereas in human life, it requires so many years. Because the lifespan of a human being is, say, roughly 100 years. So the stage of infancy will be there for 2-3 years, and the childhood maybe for another 7-8 years, and then learning, equipping oneself for life, the challenges of life, to understand life, maybe another 10 years. So the person will be really independent by the time the person is 20, 21, 22, 25. So that is why they have prescribed the right age for marriage. This is another thing. Youth is sufficient in case of other animals, and they follow automatically the rules of nature. Seasonal thing will be there for getting heat, and the age is there. All that is automatically controlled in animals. Whereas here, we have to understand and very clearly fix up some age when it is very right for a person to have relationship with another sex, another gender. So generally, it is 18. This law is there here in India. That is 18 for a girl and 21 for a boy. For a male, it is 21. For a girl, it is 18. Now, they are only indicative. But here, as a law, it is very strict. If somebody gets married before 18, before 21, yes, they are punishable here in law. I am not speaking of the law, but I am speaking of the indicative years, what they have given. Now, why it is 18 or 21? A little we have to go deep into it. First thing is, as an infant, as a child, the physical things of a boy or a girl will be almost the same. Only when the hormonal changes start taking place. Yes, one will be clearly taking shape as a woman or a girl, and another person will be taking shape as a boy, as a man. So that change will start happening once there are hormonal changes. And the hormonal changes only will finally decide to bear, how they bear the child, how they come together physically. Of course, mental aspect is also there. So the physical changes are due to the hormonal developments. Now these hormonal developments, it again depends upon, in different societies in different way, depending upon their lifestyle. That's another thing. Here, way back in India, earlier way of life, it was so that a girl used to get matured, say, around 12, 13, sometimes even 14, 15. And a boy used to get matured, say, around 18, 19, 20. Now, because of so many changes in lifestyle, so many changes, not one or two, changes in the food pattern what they are consuming, and the medicines they take very frequently, depending upon all these things, now this level has come down so sharply that we find even girls getting matured around 6, 7. And boys getting matured around 13, 14. So that is the condition now. They're all because of so many medicines containing steroids, so I got an implication of hormonal things, and the food which contains a lot of pesticides, which contains a lot of chemical fertilizers and so many things. The way we are producing food is totally different. And not only these things, but many people, they consume meat, they're all non-vegetarians. So to produce meat, they have to produce the animals. And to get more meat, that we inject so many things into the animals. And they're all chemicals and steroids. And these will have an impact on the hormonal development of a human being. So the whole cycle of hormonal development has got disturbed and is creating a lot of problems. It's a global problem, if I'm to say. So many societies are facing this problem. So they become physically matured very early, but unfortunately, the mental maturity will not match with it. That's a very difficult problem. Physical maturity will happen early, but the mental maturity will not be there. Then they are as good as animals. Because in animals, there's only physical maturity and there's a question of mental maturity. It's not there. But the same thing happens, that is, early physical maturity and no mental maturity, they're as good as animals and they behave like animals and they are into so many problems because it is not natural for a human being. This is a problem.
Okay.
When there is a physical change, when there is a hormonal change, yes, a male getting attracted towards a female getting attracted towards a male happens. That is because of the hormonal changes. But those changes and male getting attracted towards female towards male has to be grounded by certain other mental and spiritual things that is missing here. So because of that, they just rush for physical satisfaction, they just rush for physical relationships and finally land themselves in problems. Because that mental and spiritual dimensions are totally missing. Now so many societies around the world, so many families around the world are facing this. And in some places, they don't know how to handle it and they just lift their hands and say, okay, let it happen. We don't know how to handle it. And in some places, the law, the government, the governing body prescribes certain restrictions. Some follow it, some break it. And in some places they have said, okay, this is unmanageable, so legalize it. They say it legalize, it's all okay. Whatever they do is okay. That's how they think. So these are different problems what we have got. But ultimately, unless we get into this institution of vivaha and think of all the different dimensions, the relationship between a man and wife, the relationship between a husband and wife will never be happy, will never be healthy, will never be useful for the individuals as well as the society put together. But all these things are considered in depth when you're speaking of Vivaha Samskara, the root of which is there in the Vedas. They have considered all these issues. It's not one issue. They have considered a lot of issues. We find that when we look into the mantras, what they chant during that ritual of marriage. Of course, all those mantras would have been taught in the Gurukula earlier. And later, the practical side they enter into, they remind them, you see, these are all the things what I have studied in Gurukula about the relationships. Now, this is what we have got here. Now, they will understand how deeply they have worked out and they have discussed about the different facets of it. Now, coming back to the age part of it, that is the maturity. Now, maturity, we have got two things. One, I was telling, the purpose of a male and a female coming together is to generate, is to reproduce another tool, Sharira Indriya Manas, so that other soul can come here and continue its sadhana, continue its work. So that's the purpose of this creation of Sharira Indriya Manas. Now, the hormonal changes is not sufficient for begetting a child. So, for example, the hormonal changes takes place in a girl and she'll start menstruating. Okay, fine. But just that is not sufficient for her to beget a child. For that, all the reproductive organs that are related to it have to develop, have to become matured. The maturity starts at one point, but that is not sufficient enough to bear a child. So all the organs related to it has to develop and become strong enough to hold, to bear and to deliver a child. For that, it takes a few years. Say the date of maturity is around 13. Then all the organs related to it to be strong and capable of begetting a child, it may take 4 to 5 years and it comes to 13 plus 5, 18. They're all indicative, not exact. It may be 16 for some, it may be 19 for some. It's only a guiding figure. Say it is 18. So that's why I said, until you are 18, you don't get married and you don't beget a child. In the same way, if you understand for a boy, the hormonal changes may happen around 16, 17, plus the organs to be sufficient enough or clear enough, strong enough to beget a child, to produce a child, it may take 4 or 5 years, and the time it becomes 20, 21. So it is not the beginning that decides, but the maturity of it is what it is. The beginning may be around 13 or 18, but the end point, when it becomes wholly ripe, we call it as ripe. So the whole organs will become ripe only by that age, and it is 18 and 21 roughly. It's indicative only, not strict. When it is ripe, when the organs and the hormonal cycle in the person during youth, once it is ripe, yes, they can beget proper children. They can beget children without congenital diseases to a very great extent. Now, whatever I am speaking of so far, it is not just Veda, it is not just Vivaha Samskara, it is 100% Pakka science. You can call it as Vedic science if you want. If you want to call it as Ayurvedic science, it is excellent, no problem at all. And modern science also speaks about all these things, and they also are researching in that physical, psychological side also. They are thinking about the psychological sides also. It's not that the physical capability, but also the psychological development. Now, the psychological development will happen only when the physical hormonal changes, they get ripe. Only when they're ripe, by that time the mental things also will change. Now, another point of it. It's not just to beget a child. Okay, they're ripe, they're 18 and 21. Can they have a child? Physically, yes. But it's not just having a child. They should be able to rear the child. They should be able to nurse the child. They should be able to give so many guidelines to the child as parents. Now, unless they are educated to that level, still they are not eligible to have children. Physically, yes. But what about other social responsibilities, psychological responsibilities? They should be able to take care of it. And this happens in animal world automatically in a very limited way. But here, it cannot happen automatically. The parents should apply their mind know how to tend a child, know how to rear a child, and only then they are eligible to have a child. But unfortunately, in our education system, this is not there. In some places, in some schools and some colleges, yes, they give this education, but most of the time it is restricted to or limited to sex education. Mere sex education is not sufficient. That sex education, most of the time, it hovers around the physical aspect of it. But the mental aspect of it, the social aspect of it is all missing in most of the sex education. It's a very big problem. Unless we give them the psychological and social education also related to the sexual education, they are not eligible to have children and they fail to rear the children in the right way. They will not be able to discharge their duties towards the child that they have begotten. Still, I have not started anything to speak about Vivaha Samskara. It's only the introduction. Still, many things are there. Okay, this is enough for the day. So we will continue this and finally create a beautiful groundwork upon which this Vivaha Samskara is built up. So today I could talk about only this living relationship. There are so many other such things in our lives in different parts of the country and different religions. We shall discuss about all those things and create a good base for the Vivaha Samskara. Then when we see the mantras there, the things what they say there, we'll understand its importance and we'll be able to appreciate how deep their thoughts are with this introduction. Okay, thank you for it.
Thank you, Sharma ji.